This is a Crack House Chronicles production.
Welcome to the Crack House Chronicles, your favorite true crime podcast. I am Donnie, and with me is a man that says every time he rereads a text he's made with speech-to-text, he wonders if he's having a stroke. It's Dale.
Hell, that's the way it is when I read the ones I do type.
Yeah, with the fat thumbs.
My gosh, I'm terrible. I'll just be typing away and look back and go, oh my Lord.
Yeah. And how many times do you have to back up because stuff you've typed is not what you thought it was?
All the time. And or they'll change it to something. That pisses me off.
Yeah, autocorrect.
Yeah, I'm about to the point where I'm just going to send it and hell, cipher it or don't get it.
Yeah.
You fix it.
You know,
I'm
as much technology we've got, our phones ought to be able to figure out what we want to say.
Yeah, they already know I'm stupid.
Yeah.
If it's so smart, it should know.
Yeah, they're called smartphones for a reason.
Yeah, because I'm not. I can't even type it or anything.
I can't either. I have to keep backing up and backing up.
What kills me, man, my kids in school, now this is years ago, you know, I was back during the T9 days.
Yeah.
My oldest daughter, you know, you couldn't have a phone in school, but she did. You know, she would take it. She could hold her damn phone behind her back under her desk and type you a message, that T9 stuff, and it'd be perfect. I don't know.
Not even looking at the keyboard?
No. Couldn't even see her phone. I don't know.
That's brilliant.
I'm looking, typing it.
That's brilliant.
Oh, yeah, I'm just not. Anyway.
Yeah.
So if you get a text and you can't read it, you figure it out.
That's it. What's going on today, dude?
You know it. Same old.
Same old, back in the house.
Back in the shack.
Doing an episode.
We're doing
the
it.
Crack Shack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crack Shack.
Yeah. Crack Shack.
Hey, we need to call it B-52s and tell them to make us a song.
Yeah, we do. You got any good shout-outs? Anybody want to talk about, bud?
Hey. Look at there.
Dale's got that clap.
We're getting a lot of love today, man. Lots of love.
Bring some love.
Bring some love. First one I got up here is a brand new Apple Podcast 5-star review. And this comes from Aubrey Henson.
Aubrey Henson.
And titled, I freaking love you guys.
Wow.
See, I told you a lot of love.
Freaking.
Yeah. Anyway, I have never been someone who could actually listen to a podcast episode through. However, when my mom told me about y'all's podcast, that definitely changed. I am obsessed, and that's all caps. And it makes it even better that you guys are also from Cleveland County. I think I seen one of you at Stagecoach Market, but I was too scared to say anything. Next time I will, because I want a picture with the coolest guys in Cleveland County.
Man,
love y'all.
Man.
That was probably definitely me.
It's probably you, because I haven't been to Stagecoach Market in a long time.
Yeah, it's pretty cool now.
Yeah.
They got some decent food over there.
Yeah. I have to go in there and check it out.
Yeah.
It's on the other side of town. I don't get over that way much.
Yeah, it's way over yonder.
Yeah. Let's cross the river.
It definitely is. You have to go across the beach now. It's all nice down there.
Yeah, they got that walking track and stuff, walking trail.
They got a beach down there.
They do.
Yeah. It didn't went well. They put it back. It washed away. Brought some more dirt in. Okay. Anyway. Okay, I got one more for you. And this is, love you guys. Now, this comes from It's-Aslan, I think. Aslan? It's ASILYNN_T. So I'm going to go with Aslan.
Okay.
Anyway, I found this podcast while searching for Asia coverage and have been listening ever since. You can always tell how much research you've put into each case covered. And the intros always crack me up. Also, I can't wait to hear Dale attempt to say my name. A little emoji with the hand over the mouth. Ha.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, love from the upstate South Carolina.
Wow.
So thanks so much to Aslan and Aubrey for dropping those 5 stars in there. We appreciate that. It helps us out very, very much.
We do appreciate it.
And thanks for taking the time to do that.
Yeah, if anybody else wants to be like these fine folks and go to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star rate and review, you have to get something in the box.
That's right.
For us to get a notification, you'll get a big old shout out.
Well, it's always better when you got something in your box, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to get an empty box.
Yeah, you gotta have something in the box.
Right. Anyway, if I butchered your name, I'm sorry. I gave it a shot.
Yeah, he meant it with the utmost love.
Yeah.
He sure did.
Yeah, baby.
All right, Dale, after this short break, man, we're going to get going on this episode. We got a good episode.
All right, man, let's do it.
We'll be right back. All right, Dale, we are back.
We're back.
Yeah, man, we've got a crazy case. We've got a North Carolina case.
Mm-hmm. We are.
And our people here in North Carolina love our North Carolina episodes.
Yeah, I know it.
Yeah,
it's
but
awesome.
We're going to...
We try not to be too greedy, but, you know.
Yeah, we try to...
A little bias.
We try to cover all areas of the United States and stuff, but...
this one I have no idea how I didn't know about it.
It's crazy. But we're going to Salisbury, North Carolina for this one.
That's about an hour and a half down the road for anybody wondering.
Not far at all.
From us, anyway. I don't know how far it is from where you are.
Yeah, just where we are. But
Right.
just a little bit of background on the town of Salisbury.
Is that where they make the steaks?
No, I don't. They might have Salisbury steak there. Wouldn't it be cool if you go to Salisbury and go in a restaurant and say, "I'd like a Salisbury steak"?
Yeah, they look at you like you're stupid.
Yeah.
They said, we can get you some barbecue and some damn cherry wine.
Yeah, and Salisbury steak. But Salisbury, the town of Salisbury, is actually the county seat of Rowan County since 1753. And it's located about 25 miles northeast of Charlotte, North Carolina. And just a little bit more background on Salisbury. I didn't know this. It's the oldest continually populated colonial town in the western region of North Carolina. And Dale is noted for historic preservation with 5 local historic districts and 10 national register historical districts. So it's a pretty old town and pretty famous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, a little bit more on Salisbury. The soft drink Cheerwine was invented there.
Well,
And also, the regional supermarket Food Line is located in Salisbury, North Carolina.
is that their hub?
Yep. And if you ever go to Rack Room Shoes, it was founded there in Salisbury.
Well,
So, yeah, they got a lot of famous stuff going in this little town.
yeah, and then this one story here is really going to piss me off.
Yeah, because this is... I didn't know anything about this story.
I ain't neither.
And it's just an hour and a half away from us. But we're talking today about a girl by the name of Reesa Trexler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reesa.
Yeah, but just a little bit of background on Reesa. She was born on October the 11th, 1968, there in Rowan County, North Carolina, to her mom, Vicki Oakes. And Reesa grew up there in Salisbury. And she had a younger sister,
Yeah.
Jody.
Jody.
And they were 2 years apart.
Right.
And these
2
two
years,
girls,
2 months.
yeah, 2 years and 2 months. And these two girls, they were pretty close.
Pretty tight, man.
Yeah, they even shared a bedroom together.
Yeah, the whole life.
Yeah. So they,
Inseparable.
anything one did, the other one knew about. They were just so close.
Yeah.
But Reesa was described as being very warm and popular.
Yeah.
And she was a very attractive young girl.
Yeah. Beautiful smile. Whole thing. Whole works.
And she had aspirations to attend college and maybe even a teacher or pursue a career in maybe some kind of psychology. But she was known to have an ability to make other people laugh. And she had a grandfather. His name was Walt Monroe. And he was well known in the community. And she had an uncle named Richard Monroe. And he was well known as owning Richard's Barbecue. It's a pretty famous barbecue place there in Salisbury.
Right.
Yeah. And she had another grandfather. His name was James P. Trexler, but he went by Pinky. And Dale, this guy was famous for his hot dogs.
Wow.
He would sell them at the Legion ball games.
This whole family's slinging meat.
They are. But yeah, they're doing some good things there, and she come from a well-loved family. But we're moving up to June the 15th of 1984.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is when Reesa and her younger sister, Jody, are hanging out at the house. They're just hanging out at home, watching MTV, and a couple of their friends come over. These are guys, but they're not boyfriends or anything. They're just,
They're friend boys.
yes, friend boys, but not boy friends.
Right.
And their names are Paul Rogers and Jim Bryan.
Guy from Bad Company.
No, not that Paul Rogers.
No.
But they're just hanging out at the house, and their house was considered the cool house because they had MTV.
Yeah, there wasn't very many houses, I don't think, that had it then.
No. But they were just hanging out at the house, watching MTV, doing their thing. You remember MTV, don't you?
Dude, man. Yeah, I was looking earlier, because this is probably about the time that we got cable, maybe a little bit before this, but not very much. But I was just looking at the top 20 videos from 1984, dude, and it's like John Waite and Van Halen and Kenny Loggins and Phil Collins and the Cars, Prince, David Bowie, Night Ranger, Huey Lewis. I mean, it just goes on and on. This is just top level stuff here.
Yeah.
I mean, Pat Benatar, look at that, Rat, Scandal, Man for Man, remember them?
Oh, yeah, I do remember them, yeah.
Yeah, great stuff, man. So
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure they was having a blast.
Yeah, before this, we started recording, you ran off on all those bands and stuff, and it was a perfect playlist.
Yeah.
Perfect set, yeah,
Killer stuff.
to listen to.
Don't get much better than that.
I don't know, but they were just hanging out at the house doing their thing, and Reesa and Jody's mom, she had left the house. She was going to the store, do some things, run some errands, and do some things around town.
Yeah.
But these kids were just hanging out at the house.
Making some sandwiches and chilling, watching music.
Yes, they were.
I think that's technically how you say that, right? Or watching music.
Yeah, watching music and making some sandwiches.
Sandwiches.
But moving up to about 3 o'clock in the afternoon,
Mm-hmm.
this is when Reesa tells everybody that her stories are coming on TV.
Yeah, buddy, you know what that means.
That's soap opera time.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's probably a Guiding Light, 3 o'clock, I think, something like that.
Oh, yeah. You remember Guiding Light, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Reva Shane.
Yeah, you can just hear, my grandmother's and aunts. It's time for my stories.
Time for the stories.
Yeah.
And that's when she tells everybody her stories coming on. She's going to turn the TV.
So the boys bolt.
Yeah. Well, I think Paul, he had to go to work. He had a job at a fast food restaurant he was going to.
Right, well, I'm sure, but they were leaving because they didn't want to watch their stories, but that's another reason.
Yep.
He had to go to work.
Reesa watches her stories, and they're just hanging out at the house, her and Jody.
Mm-hmm.
And sometime about 4 o'clock when the soap opera goes off.
I think Jody had went in her room. She was in there listening to her music in her room and talking on the phone.
Yeah. And even reported that she was reading a magazine or something.
Gotcha.
So Reesa leaves the house. She goes next door to her grandparents because there where they lived in Salisbury, they lived right there on the same part of the street as her grandparents.
Yeah, they lived on the corner, and the grandparents was the next house.
Yeah.
It's like 300 foot away.
And I've even heard it described as their grandparents' house was like an extension of their house.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was not saying it's that close, but they were in and out all the time.
Yeah, go back and forth.
You just go drop in, which, we used to live right beside, well, not right beside, but my grandmother just lived right up straight from us, and you just drop in when you want. You
just back and forth.
Open the door and go in. It wasn't even, all the time.
Yeah, like an extension of your house.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So Reesa goes over there, and Jody's just still at home doing her thing. So it's sometime a little after 4 o'clock, Jody realizes that she's home alone,
Mm-hmm.
and Reesa's nowhere about. So she
just assumes she's next door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she goes out and walks up toward her grandparents' house. But she notices that the cars are gone and the front door is shut.
Correct.
They had a steel door. And
they had a storm door and a like you said, a steel door.
yes. And she
like
noticed
the store
that.
door is like the glass one in front, right?
But Jody noticed the front door was shut, meaning that they probably wasn't home.
Right. And, well, the cars are gone, too,
So she just turns around and goes back home thinking maybe Reesa had went with them to run errands or something.
Right, which is not unusual.
Yeah. So Jody goes back to the house, and she's just hanging out in her room talking on the telephone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sometime later, just a little bit later, she hears a blood-curdling scream coming from her grandparents' home.
Right, well, at least from that way.
Yeah.
And she said in an interview where in their bedroom, where it was located in her house, there was some big windows, and she could basically sit on the bed and talking on the phone and could look and see her grandparents' house, pretty much the front porch and everything. So it was like, right there.
Yeah. So she saw her grandpa come out of the house and just fall to his knees screaming.
Yeah, he was the one screaming, yeah.
Yeah. So she runs out, and he's telling her to call for help.
Yeah.
Call somebody. Call for help.
Call an ambulance.
Yeah. So this was before 911. So she has no idea who she's calling or anything. She just calls the operator. Calls 0.
Yeah.
And calls the operator and says, we need help.
I wonder when 911 was implemented. I looked today, and it was around this time, but it wasn't everywhere.
I'm sure it was probably in the big cities, maybe Charlotte and
right.
some surrounding areas, but probably not out in the smaller communities.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But Jody goes back in and dials 0 to get the operator to get some help out there.
Yep.
She thought that might have been something happened to her grandmother.
Well, that's what she assumed, because that's kind of what you would think. Right?
Yeah. But Jody calls for help, and then she hangs up, and then she goes back out to her grandparents' house. And she's in the house, and her grandfather is like, blocking her from going into a bedroom.
Right.
Yeah.
He won't let her in.
No. But she manages to get past him, and when she goes in, she sees Reesa laying on the floor.
Right.
Partially covered up with a blanket.
Yeah.
She can see part of her face and maybe a foot.
And some of her hair.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of blood. A lot. And she doesn't know what's going on. She thinks maybe Reesa had just fallen and gotten hurt or something.
She didn't know.
No.
I don't think she had a clue.
No, but the police get there, ambulance get there, and they start realizing that Reesa had been stabbed.
Yes, a lot.
Many times, multiple times in the neck and upper chest.
A couple in the face, I think.
Yeah. And about this time, Vicky, their mom, is getting home. And when she gets home, she is told of this, and for some reason, Vicky just starts running. She starts running up the street, and they have to go chase her down.
It's a shock, man.
I guess. I don't understand, but yeah, I guess it is. And they bring Vicky back to the house, and they're trying to figure out what happened to Reesa. What has happened? And I think I've heard in reports that they leave her in the house for many hours trying to
Process.
process the scene, figure out what's going on. But there's no sign of forced entry. There's nothing stolen.
Right.
But it looks like there's maybe some struggle.
Definitely some struggling.
Yeah.
Yeah, but only in that room.
Mm-hmm. And Reesa was still wearing her bracelet, watch, and ring. And like we talked about, a blanket partially covered her body, suggesting that there was a personal element to the crime.
Right.
Maybe somebody knew her because no forced entry or anything like that.
Right. And she was naked under this blanket.
She was, yeah. So the Salisbury Police Department, they're on the scene, is led by some investigators, and one of them is Jim Hurley, and he's collecting evidence, and even a sexual assault kit is used. And they move Reesa's body, and they've discovered there's a lot of blood, and also they find some semen under her body. But they're going through this scene, Dale, and they're trying to figure out who could have possibly done this to Reesa.
Right.
And they've even brought the FBI in, and they suggested that it was possibly a suspect, maybe a white male aged 18 to 24, maybe with some emotional problems, someone who knew Reesa but not too close. And they start asking questions around town, around the neighborhood, and they even bring the two guys in that had been to Jody and Reesa's home previously that day.
Well, you got to do that. You got to start with, especially when you don't have nothing, you don't know anything, you have to see the last people who saw her alive.
Yeah,
you know?
And they are raking these boys over the coals.
Yeah, even I think one guy went and got him at work, didn't he?
Yeah, the Paul Rogers one. Yeah, brought him in and questioned. I mean, they didn't know anything. These boys didn't know anything.
Well, you think about it, you go from eating sandwiches and watching Prince on TV, then
going to
work.
work.
You work and you're having a great day. I mean, even though you're at work, you've had a good day, and they come and snatch you up and tell you your friend you was just hanging out with has been murdered.
Yeah, can't even imagine.
Try to process that, and just within a few hours.
Yeah. And they bring Jim in, the other friend, bring him in, and they rake him over the coals, and he even admits to the police that he had a crush on Reesa.
Which he should have never said.
No.
I mean, he told me, listen, I would never, ever hurt her. I wouldn't touch a hair on her head. And then he says, because, I had a crush on her. Well, that just makes them look more guilty in their eyes.
They're side-eyeing that boy quick.
Yeah.
And, there's been females that I've had crushes on that I've been friends with.
Yeah.
But you didn't cross that line.
Right. And he didn't cross the line. He just told them that because, he thought it would help him look better to say he wouldn't hurt her. But to them, that looks a little more, especially since what had happened to her.
Yeah.
With the sexual assault and this kind of thing.
Yeah. And they're starting to talk to the family members, and they even suspect that Reesa's grandfather, Walt, had maybe killed her.
Yeah. Well, it's happened before, the person who found the body.
Yeah.
Sometimes I found this, but really they didn't find it. They just, knew it about the whole time, but they found it to make it look better.
Because Walt and his wife, the grandparents, they had been out that day running errands, and he'd even dropped his wife off at the beauty shop to get her hair done. And he went back home.
Yeah, I've read that too, and then also had seen where in an interview she said that the truck and the car were gone. So where was the other vehicle?
Don't know.
So
we're going to try to find that answer out later
there's
on.
a couple little things about
But the grandfather did.
Like that.
He was suspected.
Well, they took him in and talked to him, and he was just so emotional and broke down. He was all to hell, and I think they pretty much said, "Listen, this dude didn't do it. He's mentally just tore it all apart."
Yeah.
There ain't no way he done this.
I know. But then they bring Jody in. They start talking to her.
Yeah.
And
then she's 13.
13 years old at the time. And at this point, Jody, she became a focal point of suspicion, Dale.
Yeah.
And people got to talking around town.
And it's ridiculous because, they had nothing.
No.
They took her in, fingerprinted her. Well, I guess did they fingerprint?
I don't know. They checked her out pretty good.
They took her in and I think they did fingerprint her. And they took hair samples and saliva samples, and they even made her go into a room with a female detective and had her trim her pubic hair and taking all this stuff, and she's going, "What in the hell are y'all doing this for? I don't understand."
13 years old.
13. Ain't got a clue what's going on.
No. Just a kid, man.
Now remember, there's blood everywhere, and they've got her, she didn't have a speck of blood or nothing on her. So I don't understand why, they don't have nothing, so they go after these kids.
Well, the reason they bring Jody in, they're very suspicious of her, is because they thinking that she might have been an accomplice to someone who done this to Reesa, and that she was a lookout or maybe held the door or opened the door
Oh, God.
for this.
So they really don't have anything.
They really don't. And it is a terrible, terrible lack of investigation going on.
Yeah, and it just gets worse.
It does. It really does.
I mean, they get tunnel vision on these kids, especially her, and that's it. They're zoomed in. Now, they did go around, and ask a couple neighbors if they'd seen anything, and some people said they heard some hollering and some screaming, and even said, if we heard it, down the block here, why couldn't she hear some screaming right next door?
Mm-hmm.
Because she didn't hear nothing.
And people even reported maybe seeing people running from the scene, but nothing was looked into.
Right.
Nothing. People were interviewed, like you said.
I wonder, like you said the other day, I wonder if they ever asked about who she was talking to on the phone at the time and went to corroborate the story there.
I'd like to find out how.
Because, it's come up before about phone records and stuff, but I've never heard if they, like you said, if they even asked who she was on the phone with at the time, because she said she was on the phone looking out the window when, to see what was going on at that point.
But Jody, she is like suspect number one in the police's eyes.
Yeah.
They are just laser focused in on her, that she could have had something to do with her sister's murder.
Yeah, and they're going around town and they're asking people about her and how she is and how their relationship was, and they're starting to plant seeds everywhere in town, is my opinion.
Yeah. There's the girl that killed her sister. There's the girl that killed her sister.
Yeah. Well, and it got worse at the funeral. The funeral, it was like 6 days later or whatever, and then there's this one photo that you see all the time of her sitting at the funeral with just kind of a blank stare
stone
on her face.
face, yeah.
Everybody's like, look, she ain't even crying. She had something to do with it.
Yeah.
She ain't even look.
She don't show any emotion at all.
But I'm thinking, this girl's probably been crying for the last 6 days. All the hell.
Probably hadn't slept.
They were inseparable, since the day she was born.
Yeah.
Been together every day.
Reesa's all she's knew.
Yeah. Every day, every moment of every day, pretty much. And then all of a sudden, that's all gone.
Mm-hmm.
And you're 13 trying to process that. And then you got these cops up your ass. Sorry. You have these cops. Well, just leave it in.
Yeah.
I get irritated.
Yeah, this episode pisses Dale off big time.
Yeah, bad.
But, their friends, the Paul and the Jim that were over there that day watching MTV and making sandwiches, they were interviewed repeatedly but could not be connected to this crime.
Well, Paul even moved. He left. He moved to California.
He was so
distraught.
Yeah, and being badgered for this, he just left town.
Yeah, because they would just go around and pull him over and start and interrogate and ask them questions, trying to get them to slip up on their story, just out of the blue.
Yeah.
And even one time in California when he was out there, he was dating this girl, and this might have been a couple years later. I'm not sure what the timeline was, but he was out there, and he was with this girl, and gets a knock on the door, open the door, and it's the cops asking him about this same thing again out there.
Yeah.
They were just relentless, but they get the same story every time.
Yeah.
Because they didn't do it.
Because they're so laser focused on just that group of friends.
These three people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's terrible. And Jody, this girl, I don't see how she made it through all this. I really don't.
No. She had some hard times, she's admitted, you got to do stuff to numb it down, and she did.
Yes, drug abuse, alcoholism.
You're just rebelling back, man. But hell, what are you going to do? Nobody listened to you. It was even so bad that her mother started asking her, like, anything you want to tell me? I still love you. You can tell me anything. They were even getting in her head. And she was kind of getting convinced that she was in on it somehow.
Yeah, the mom, yeah.
And then Jody even left, and then she run away at one time. And it's like, look, I'll come back. We can have a normal conversation without you interrogating me. I can't do that.
I know.
My Lord.
Yeah. Bad. And even guys that Jody would date, they'd see him out. The police would approach him and tell that you need to watch her. She's kind of shady.
Yeah. And she couldn't go nowhere. She couldn't go hang out with anybody, any friends. She would meet a kid if they went to a new school or whatever, and then would find out, their parents would find out who she was, and then they wouldn't let them associate.
Or spend the night or anything.
No dances, no this. You can't be with her because all this over her head, all because of this law enforcement.
And she was dating a guy one time that had been married before and had a kid,
right.
And they'd been dating for a little while. And
this is way later now.
Yeah, but she had asked the guy, when am I going to get to meet your son? And he plain out told her, said,
you're never going
to meet my son.
And it was all because of this.
Yeah. And she obviously broke it off real quick,
right.
But this girl, man, she went through hell,
right,
for many, many years.
Right.
But saying that, the case was cold.
Yeah.
They had nothing. They couldn't do anything or find anything. on this. So it was,
Even though, I mean, it was a pretty gruesome crime scene, man. You would think they could find something. I mean, she'd been stabbed 18 times, and even there was a part of the knife was broke off in her shoulder. Her spinal cord had been severed. So this was a violent attack. It was, this little 13-year-old girl, I just don't see it, dude. It's just...
But they were saying that it was up close and personal.
Yeah, well, duh.
Well, yeah, that was the way it was reported.
And me and my wife were watching a thing on this, and she's like, I just don't. Unless she was getting ill about it too, but she's like, listen, why do they keep going to this girl? They know they found semen on the scene. I don't think she left it there. So there's got to be something going on.
Well, that's why they're thinking, that maybe she was an accomplice and was a lookout or held the door for somebody. That's what they're thinking.
Yeah.
That she knows more than
she's saying.
Yes.
Even though, and they say, she was wanting them to take a polygraph, but they're saying that 13 was too young to do that or something. I think that was their excuse.
Yeah.
But anyway, over the years, they still would never do it for her. It's just, I don't know. It's just frustrating. It's just frustrating.
I know. So the years pass.
Yes.
Many years pass. For 34 years, it passed.
Yeah, and she's eating this every day.
Oh, yeah.
Every day.
Yeah, I mean, being around town, being the scrutiny of suspicion, and people talking about you.
Whispering behind your back, or being friendly, and as soon as you walk off, start talking about you.
Oh, yeah.
God, can you imagine how...
So we're moving up to April of 2018. Jody is now in her 40s. And she's sitting around one night watching Dr. Phil.
Yeah, she said she had, weird sleeping patterns. When I get that, in her mind, I'm sure she was all to hell.
And she's seeing people on Dr. Phil who take polygraphs and clear their name, or for some reason, she writes the show. She sends an email to the Dr. Phil show.
Just, what the hell?
Yeah. And not thinking she'd get a response, I guess it just made her feel better to write an email. Well, she gets a response back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they fly her out to California. And she goes on the Dr. Phil show in an episode called Cold Case, I Didn't Murder My 15-Year-Old Sister.
Right.
And she's on there.
Yeah.
And Jody is here to clear her name.
Yes. False accusations and small-town gossip haunt me.
Yeah. But she goes on a Dr. Phil show, and Dr. Phil interviews her for a while, talking about the case, telling her what happened, and she takes a polygraph test.
Yeah, from a retired FBI guy.
Yeah, he's a well-renowned FBI polygrapher.
Yeah, number one in Dr. Phil's eyes, he said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she takes this polygraph.
He said it was almost 2 hours she was doing this.
Yeah, and she passed this polygraph test. Yeah. But her passing this test, it renewed some interest in the case.
But it was crazy on that damn Dr. Phil show, man. There was this woman came on there named Laura, who said that she was I think it was the sheriff's daughter at the time everything was going on. And man, she just sitting there and she just knew Jody did it, sitting right there in front of her, saying this. She knew she did it, and she did all this stuff, and I'm going, I just don't understand. Jody, oh Lord, I'd want to take a baseball bat to this woman.
Flat out accusing her right there on the show.
Right in front of her.
Yeah.
God almighty, that everybody knows it, everybody knows you done it. Blah blah blah. And it was like, she's like, well, why are you even saying this? And it's like, well, and it was just silly reasons that they kept coming up that why they thought it was her.
Well, she pulled out a picture of
she
Jody
said
from a previous Halloween, Jody dressed up
as a vampire victim with the neck bites and all.
And she's telling Jody, look here, you look dark in this picture. Could you not dressed up as something different for Halloween? It's just mocking the whole situation.
Oh, God.
Could you not have dressed up as something different? And Jody said, it's Halloween.
What the Lord? And then Jody's daughter was there going, look, I've dressed up as this too. I just don't prove nothing. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then there was a lady that called in named Beth, and she was saying the same thing. She didn't want to appear on the show, but she wanted to call in, and she said that she was the former best friend of Reesa, and said that Jody had said to her, so what you going to do now? Your best friend's dead or something. And she's like, I never said that. Where is this all coming from? So all these 35 years of shit floating around in this town and her catching all this hell, it's just ridiculous. And it built on itself.
Yeah.
And she couldn't go nowhere. And she said, anytime she'd get a job or anything, where people didn't know her, it wouldn't take but about 2 or 3 days, and then it'd start again.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah. But this episode on Dr. Phil, it prompted the Salisbury Police Department.
Yeah.
There was a police detective. His name was Sergeant Travis Schulenberger.
Yes.
And it caused him to revisit the case.
Yeah, I think he said that when this case actually happened, he was about 6 years old. So
In 84?
Yeah. And then he had grew up with it, so then it got him to thinking about it, and then I think he called her, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
And said that he wanted to start looking into this stuff, some new eyes. I'm going to dig out stuff, and I'm sure she's going, yeah, whatever, because, her and the police department do not have a very good relationship. She said, she tried for a long time to go up there and try to, and they go, well, we're working on it, and kind of rush her out the door, so she just even quit, trying, because she didn't think they were looking at nothing but her.
Yep.
So he's trying to make good on it, and call her up and say, well, we're going to try it out and see what happens.
Yeah.
And he starts going through all the old evidence base. Now, saying that and how bad and messed up this whole police situation is with law enforcement down there in Salisbury, whoever the detectives were that went in and covered this scene did a great job.
They preserved a lot of
with
stuff.
collecting stuff that at the time didn't do anything for them.
Besides their tunnel vision, they collected the stuff really well.
Yes, correct. So those detectives, or whoever the crime scene processors were, did an amazing job.
Yes.
So I'll give them that, but the other part, crap.
So this Travis Schulenberger, the detective, he revisited the case in November of 2018.
Yes.
And he started reviewing the files and submitted previously untested evidence.
Yeah, he found that those sperm
Yeah.
samples. He found that, that DNA. And it's like,
Yeah,
oh, so now, moving all the way up to 2018, this evidence is good stuff to have now.
Yeah, so
It's
he submitted it
processable.
to the North Carolina State Crime Lab and Parabon Nano Labs.
Mhm.
This is a Virginia-based DNA technology company. And he sent the stuff off.
And they got a hit.
They did. And they got a hit, but it didn't come back as anybody. Nobody was in the system in CODIS.
Right.
Yeah. So they had the Parabon Nano Labs start looking into GEDmatch to be able to match the genealogy part of it,
Some familiar stuff.
tracking it down.
Kind of like the Golden State Killer thing.
Yes.
Right.
And when they got to checking it out, it came back to a family with the last name Blair.
Mm.
Yeah. And the Parabon Nano Labs, they identified a potential suspect.
So basically, they started identifying basic relatives and try to reverse engineer back down the family tree to narrow it down.
Yeah. To this person that semen belonged to.
Right.
Yeah. And the name came back as a Curtis Edward Blair.
Yes.
And Dale, he was a black male who was 40 years old at the time of the murder.
In 84.
Yeah. And Blair had lived in Rowan County, and he was working at the Frito-Lay factory.
It was just like a block across from where she lived, kind of catty corner, I guess you could
Just
say.
a block or two from the house.
Yeah, really close to where they lived.
Yeah, and Dale, this guy, he had a criminal history,
Yeah, they looked into him.
including a conviction for assault with a deadly weapon for which he served jail time.
Is this the one on his family?
Yes.
Yeah, he was. I think it was in the 60s, though, or late 60s, early 70s when it was. He actually had taken a knife. Him and his wife had got into some kind of argument, and he had taken a knife and slashed her across the legs a couple of times and even stabbed his 2-year-old daughter in the abdomen.
Yeah.
So
But
luckily, he's a great guy.
Luckily, they lived. They survived.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
And so that would have been that early that they wouldn't out take DNA samples or anything. Then that's why nothing showed up on CODIS, because it was so early. But he did have a pretty bad record.
He did. But this Travis Schulenberger, he got to looking through the reports, and he saw eyewitness reports of a black male running near the crime scene, and this aligned with his lead.
Right. And I guess they never went no further with that lead originally.
Well, he goes back to looking, and this Curtis Edward Blair was interviewed back in '84 for this crime. He was talked to. He was in the report, but it didn't go anywhere.
Good Lord.
Yeah. So
they had the man. And
they actually
talked to him one time and talked to these kids 856,000 times.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But they were so focused on Jody having something to do with her sister's murder. Yeah. So they got this hit back with this Curtis Edward Blair. And on August the 6th of 2019, the state crime lab confirmed that the DNA profile from Curtis Edward Blair was consistent with the major contributor of the sperm found on Reesa. But Curtis Edward Blair had moved to California shortly after the murder.
So they got their man now, right?
Yeah.
So they just got to find him.
Yeah, and he was arrested in 1986 for robbing two men, one at knife point.
Now, didn't he have some kind of, I don't know, I want to say sexual arrest or something somewhere? I mean, some kind of something.
Yeah, but some kind of sexual assault convictions at one time or another in his
background,
criminal history. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
But now, this Travis Schulenberger, he got to looking deeper, trying to find out who this Curtis Edward Blair was.
Yeah, so I know he's jacked up because now he's got his man.
Oh, yeah.
He knows exactly who it is. He's got his name. He's got his DNA profile. We just got to find him.
Yeah, that's right. So he gets looking deeper, and he finds that Curtis Edward Blair was deceased.
Oh.
And he could not face trial. But now get this, the Salisbury Police Department, they chose not to officially name Curtis Edward Blair as a suspect during the press conference on all this. This was on December 3rd, 2019.
So you're saying they came out with a press conference saying that this thing is now solved. We have found out who has done it, but we ain't going to tell you.
Well, they didn't release his name because he's dead and he could not be brought to trial.
Right.
Yeah. But now this Travis Schulenberger, this detective, he goes one step further. He wants to make sure that this Curtis Edward Blair is the person responsible for Reesa Trexler's death.
There's only one way to do that.
He goes and files a court order to have his remains exhumed. Yeah. But now get this, the name hasn't been released, so that nobody knows who this is.
Right.
So they exhume the body, and they confirm through DNA that it was Curtis Edward Blair.
So we're 100%.
About 100% that he was the killer of Reesa Trexler.
Right.
But now, just keep in mind, the name hadn't been released.
Right. So all we know is we have a killer, and we know who it was.
Yeah. But now, there's a reporter for the local TV station in Charlotte, WBTV. His name is David Wisnett.
Right.
And he takes it upon himself to go through court records of exhumations to try to find out who they're exhuming.
Because court records, and he went to the graveyard and found a spot.
Yeah. And David Wisnett, the reporter for WBTV, he releases the name of Curtis Edward Blair to the public.
Yeah.
Yeah. But on December the 3rd, 2019, the Salisbury police, joined by the North Carolina Attorney General Josh Stein and Parabon's chief genealogist C.C. Moore, who attended the conference via Skype, announced the case was solved and closed, and the DNA evidence exonerated Jody Trexler Laird and other family members, providing a long-awaited closure. And other family members attended this press conference. And Vicky, the mom, expressed relief, stating, "So many nights laying in bed wondering, maybe now I can sleep."
Wow.
And they said Jody, who had been instrumental in reviving this case, said it's been a long road, something that honestly for many, many years we didn't think would have even happened.
Right. Yeah, man, I'm glad this happened. And actually, he did come out straight and said she's been exonerated from all this stuff, and it wasn't her. And her, instead of them celebrating that, she's finally got off, she was really worried when the name of Curtis Edward Blair was released. She was concerned that his family would be blindsided by this news, that he was the killer. So she was, thinking about his family as much as her own.
Even though she'd been raked over the coals for 34 years.
Yeah. What a person, man.
Yeah.
Heart of gold, dude.
Yeah, if you look up the word nice in the dictionary, you ought to have a picture of Jody there.
Yeah.
Because she's probably the nicest person ever.
God, can you imagine living under this for 35 years? I mean, that's most of her whole life.
Yeah. I mean, she was 40 at the time.
Man.
When she went on Dr. Phil.
Yeah, from 13 to 40.
Yeah.
Before they ever got anything going. So she'd been eating it for all that time. And luckily, Dr. Phil had her own, and that really changed everything because that gave it nationwide, coverage and put a little heat on there. And then also having Schellenberg go, look, we need to look into this, and him being smart enough to know that times have changed so much as far as, what we can do now with evidence, that there might be something in here that can help us. Mm-hmm. And it did.
And it's sad that, Reesa Trexler lost her life, man. 15-year-old beautiful girl was gone.
Yeah.
Killed and murdered brutally.
Such a violent way.
Yeah. But, you know, Jody is a victim in this, too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. It's just
And
sad.
didn't do anything. Not
No.
a damn thing. She was talking on the phone. I mean, you think about it. You're in your room. You know, back in the day, of course, you got the wall phone, and you're laying on the bed talking to whoever.
Got the
whatever.
cord draped across the floor.
Yeah, rolling it around in your hand. You know how you did. You know,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. Looking at a magazine or whatever, playing a record or whatever you're doing, blah, blah, sudden, and then you're just blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden you hear your grandfather scream next door. And from that moment on, your life has changed.
All the way around. 360. Just life has changed.
Not only have you lost your best friend and sister that you'll never see again, you're just catching hell for the next 35 years
Yeah.
for nothing.
Walking down the street, people talking about you.
Yeah. Can't even go to the grocery store. You can't go anywhere. A restaurant. I mean, think about it.
I know.
It's not like it's a giant place where a lot of people don't know who you are.
Yeah. Salisbury is not that big of a town.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not teeny-tiny, but it definitely is not that big to where you can go get lost and nobody knows who you are.
I know.
Especially when it's been handed down, I'm sure, from, you know, people from back when parents wouldn't let her stay with their kids, and then those kids are not going to let her kids be associated with their kids.
Mhm.
It just keeps going on.
Yep. But this Curtis Edward Blair, he did die in 2004 of congestive heart failure in San Diego, California.
Mm.
Yeah.
So apparently what happened, this guy he walked through the neighborhood going home from work or something,
he was on his way home from work. He crossed that neighborhood.
and just happened to see her walking in that house, I guess?
Supposedly, I don't know. Now, I've heard Jody say that she didn't know him.
Right. Yeah, no, I don't think anybody knew him. But so maybe he was cutting through the neighborhood to go home, and it was just a prime opportunity. Maybe he saw her walking in the door.
Maybe he's seen these girls before.
Possibly. You know, if he took that route, maybe walking home from work, because it would be, I think it was convenient to go through there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, damn.
Yeah.
So he was in and out and gone, and then they got blamed for all his time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. But Reesa Trexler's murder, it left a lasting impact on Salisbury. There was a Facebook page, Remember Reesa Dawn Trexler, R.I.P., that's maintained by Jody. And it keeps her memory alive with photos and tributes.
Speaking of that, you know, they had a Facebook page when Facebook first come up and popped about Reesa, and Jody joined it, and they kicked her out.
Yeah.
They kicked her out.
Uh-huh.
I don't know who was running it then. Was it Beth running it then?
Probably.
God
But you know,
almighty.
this lady that was on Dr. Phil accusing Jody of all this, she did apologize to
Oh
Jody.
yeah, she stood up right there in front of everybody.
She did apologize.
Yeah, I don't know if that means a lot, and from what all she said to her, but at least she did it.
But Jody did acknowledge the apology, but still, you know, but being on Dr. Phil, that was a big turning point for this whole case for law enforcement to take another look at this.
Big profile. I mean, that platform really changed everything.
Yeah. But Travis Schulenberger, the detective there, him and Jody had become good friends, and, you know, he took this on and solved this case.
Right.
Yeah, kudos to him.
Yeah, and I think even after, you know, a lot of time that she actually had reconnected with those two guys that were getting all the blame too.
Yeah.
And had got together and was doing a lot of talking and kind of investigating on their own.
But, you know, getting back to those two guys.
Paul, anyway.
But getting back to those two guys, Paul, you know, it affected him the rest of his life, and Jim Bryan, it affected him even more.
Yeah, Jim was bad.
Yeah. He had a lot of problems, and I think he ended up taking his life because of it.
Yeah, he died pretty early. Said he had got into stuff, and Paul said he'd called him a couple of times and said, you know, well, I'm going back to rehab. Maybe I can get this sorted out now. And he was just in a bad way.
Yeah, Jody had even stated that her and Jim had met for a beer one night, and we're talking about this case, and she could tell that it weighed heavily on him.
Yeah. That law enforcement group there, they just brought a lot of havoc into a lot of good people, and they just tore them down, man.
Mm-hmm.
Tore them down.
Yep, bad detective work.
Yeah.
In the early days.
Thank God for the people who processed the crime scene.
Yeah.
And Mr. Schuller.
That was the only good thing about it, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Dale, that is the murder of Reesa Trexler.
It is.
Yeah, sad case right here in North Carolina.
Right down the road, bub.
Yep. All right, bud, we're going to get out of here, man.
All right, let's roll.
We want everyone to be safe. Please be careful and always be aware of your surroundings.
Because the next episode could be about you.
This is the Crack House Chronicles.